Have you ever thought about just how much knowledge is needed to bake a loaf of bread? You'd need to know what ingredients to get, how to measure, how hot to make the oven, how long to let the dough rise, when to take it out of the oven, so many things. Of course, you could just follow the recipe. Well, today I'm going to give you a recipe that will help you do some complicated math. So listen up and take notes because today we're talking about dividing mixed numbers. Let's do it. What is up, you guys, and welcome to Grip EDU. I am Mr. D as usual, and hey, before we get started, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button so you can get every one of our new videos and help others find us too. Today we're talking about dividing mixed numbers. This is one of the hardest skills you'll learn with fractions, not because it's particularly difficult, but because it involves so many of the skills you've already learned. So let's get to it. Here's our example problem. There are 5 main steps in dividing mixed numbers, but each step is not really that complicated. Step 1 is to turn both mixed numbers into improper fractions. If you only have one mixed number, then you'll need to turn that one into an improper fraction. The point is to get rid of the whole number in front of the fraction. So we need to get that whole number out of there, and we can do that by converting them both into improper fractions. Let's do that really quick. 1 2/3. We'll loop up from the denominator, multiply at the bottom, add at the top. So that's 3 times 1 plus 2, and that makes 5. And of course, the denominator stays the same. And for the second number, 7 times 2 plus 1 is 15, and that'll be over 7. Step 2 is to set up the problem to multiply by the reciprocal. Remember that when dividing fractions, you can actually multiply by the reciprocal. That means we're keeping the first fraction the same, but we're flipping the numbers around for the second fraction. Step 3 is optional, but if you don't do it, you'll be creating a much harder problem for yourself in most cases. And that step is to cross-simplify. Remember, that means to look at the diagonal pairs and see if they have a common factor. If they do, divide them by their greatest common factor. Look at these diagonal pairs. Those don't share a common factor, so we'll leave them alone. But 5 and 15? Yes, their greatest common factor is 5, so we'll divide them each by 5. The 5 is now a 1, and the 15 is now a 3. If I didn't do this step, I'd be working with larger, more difficult numbers, and the more of these you do, the more you'll realize what a time saver this step really is. Step 4 is to multiply. Now remember, when we multiply fractions, we don't need common denominators, we just multiply straight across. Step 5 is to turn your answer back into a mixed number if necessary. So what you can see here is that dividing mixed numbers is almost the exact same steps as dividing regular fractions. You just need to turn them both into improper fractions before you begin. Now there can be a variety of ways that you're asked to divide with mixed numbers. Maybe one of the numbers is just a regular fraction, or maybe one of the numbers is a whole number. Let's tackle a couple of these in our practice today. Grab a paper and pencil and head with me to the whiteboard. I've kept the steps listed here as a guide to help us as we solve these. Feel free to pause before I solve them if you want to see if you're on the right track. For this first problem, we'll turn both numbers into improper fractions. Easy enough. Now we have 13 over 2 divided by 9 over 4. The second step is to set up the multiplication problem and find the reciprocal. So we'll keep the first number the same, but we'll change the division symbol to a multiplication symbol and get the reciprocal of 9 over 4, which is 4 over 9. Step 3 is to cross-simplify. Check those diagonal pairs. 2 and 4 share a common factor of 2, so let's divide them each by 2. The 4 is now a 2, and the 2 is now a 1. Step 4 is to multiply. 13 times 2 is 26, and 1 times 9 is 9. Step 5 is to turn back into a mixed number if necessary. And since we ended with an improper fraction, it is necessary. 9 goes into 26 2 times, so we'll put a 2 as our whole number. And it would take 8 more to count up to 26. so that becomes our numerator. The denominator stays the same, and we now have our final answer of 2 8/9. For our second problem, let's make one of those numbers a regular fraction. On this one, we still have to turn the mixed number into an improper fraction, so we'll do that. 2 2/5 becomes 12/5. Now we've got 3/4 divided by 12/5. Next, we'll set up the multiplication problem with the reciprocal and write it as 3/4 times 5/12. Step 3 is to cross simplify. Check those diagonal pairs. 4 and 5 don't have a common factor other than 1, but 3 and 12 do. They're part of the times 3's, so we'll divide them both by 3. The 3 is now a 1, and the 12 is now a 4. Step 4 is to multiply. 1 times 5 is 5, and 4 times 4 is 16. And we don't need to do step 5 because it didn't end up as an improper fraction. And it's in simplest form because we cross-simplified ahead of time. All right, last one. This time, let's plug a whole number in there. Okay, step 1, turn the mixed number into an improper fraction. Easy enough. 3 1/3 becomes 10/3. The 5 is going to need to turn into a fraction. So we'll do what we always do with whole numbers when we're multiplying or dividing fractions, and we'll write it as that number over 1. Now we're ready for step 2, and we'll change it into a multiplication problem and flip that 5/1 to become 1/5 because we multiply by the reciprocal when we divide fractions. Next, cross simplify. I see a diagonal pair of 10 and 5 that share a common factor. Those are both times 5's, so we'll divide them both by 5. 10 divided by 5 is 2, and 5 divided by 5 is, of course, 1. Almost done. Now we multiply. Look how easy it's become now. 2 times 1 is 2, and 3 times 1 is 3. And we can skip step 5 because it didn't end up as an improper fraction. Dividing mixed numbers takes a lot of steps, but if you follow them carefully, you'll be on your way soon enough. For more math tutorials like this one, or for the 1-minute straight-to-the-point version of this skill, click links that you see on the screen here. Until next time, I'm Mr. D. Thanks for joining me.